Hi guys, welcome to TIMS channel. This is our first anatomy lecture for the CNS module. This lecture is just going to be an introduction for the upcoming lectures. Here are the objectives. In this lecture, we need to know the main two divisions of the nervous system, which are central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. And we are going to have an overview for the subdivisions: cranial nerves, spinal nerves, ganglia, cerebellum, spinal cord, BNS. All these are the subdivisions. We are going to start this lecture using this table. Actually, it was made to make it easier for you to study the general organization of the nervous system. As we said before, nervous system is made up of central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. This diagram shows the difference between peripheral and central nervous system using different colors. Here is the central, made up of brain and spinal cord. And here is the peripheral nervous system, any nerve outside brain and spinal cord. Actually, the brain is made up of different parts. It's not, as many people think, an organ that is made of a single unit. No. The brain is made of brain, brainstem, and cerebellum. And of course, it's found inside the skull. Here is an elaborative diagram for the brain pulse. Here is the cerebrum, diencephalon, and both are known as brain. Here is the brainstem, which is made up of midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. And finally, the cerebellum, which is found inside the posterior region of the brain. The peripheral nervous system is made up of two types of nerves: cranial nerves, which originate from the brain, and spinal nerves, which of course originate from the spinal cord, plus their ganglia. Ganglia is a collection of cell bodies of nerves that are found outside the nervous system. Peripheral nervous system is made up of somatic and autonomic parts. Somatic means that I'm the one who controls the action. Unlike in the case of autonomic, I cannot control the action. Let's have an example. If I'm trying to lift up a bag, this means that I'm the one who's controlling my arm muscles to lift this bag. So this is a voluntary control. During this action, my somatic nervous system is working. Another case, my heart is beating faster because I have just seen a dog. Can I lower the heartbeats? Of course not. May I make it faster? Of course not. So I'm not controlling the action. This is involuntary. So here the autonomic nervous system is working. Somatic nervous system, as we said, is responsible for voluntary control. It's made up of cranial and spinal nerves in addition to their ganglia. Inside the somatic nervous system, any nerve maybe a sensory or a motor. So it consists of both types. Actually, what is the difference between a sensory and a motor nerve? Sensory nerve is the nerve that carries nerve impulses from any organ to the central nervous system, while the motor nerve carries the impulse in the opposite direction, from the central nervous system to any organ. The somatic nervous system rarely affects long-term survival. For example, heartbeats. This is a long-term survival. And of course, it controls the skeletal muscles. As we said in our example, I'm the one who's controlling my muscle actions to carry the bag. The autonomic nervous system, of course, has no conscious control, as we said before, so that it controls cardiovascular system, reproduction, digestion, respiration, urinary. Any of these things are not voluntary controlled, so that the autonomic nervous system is responsible for these systems. The autonomic nervous system has two further subdivisions, sympathetic or parasympathetic. Both of these systems are responsible for the part that cannot be voluntarily controlled. So what is the difference between them? Sympathetic, which starts with S, is responsible for stress. So, during a fight or flight or a fear, I need my heartbeats to be faster to supply more oxygen to my organs, especially skeletal muscles. I need my iris to get wider so that I have a proper vision. All these cannot be consciously controlled, and all these things are required to support my body in a stress condition, like a fight or fright. While the parasympathetic division is responsible for rest. Imagine you are having your laptop, opening your Facebook, having a burger sandwich. Doing all this, you are not in a stress condition. You are just using your hands to write or to chat. Your digestive system works to digest your burger sandwich. So this is unconsciously controlled. But this is not a stress condition to use a sympathetic division. That's why a special division is made for involuntary controls, but are not stress. These are rest. Parasympathetic division. So remember, sympathetic division, stress condition, fight or fright. Parasympathetic, rest and digest. Now let's go through in further details for the components of the central nervous system. The brain is made up of two cerebral hemispheres which are connected by diencephalon, which we have already seen in the elaborative diagram. The brain is made up of 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes, which are found in this diagram. Here is the frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal. These lobes are divided or separated from each other using a sulci. Sulci are depressions found inside the brain. Here is the central sulci, which is responsible for separation of frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. It separates the two lobes. Here is the lateral sulci. As shown in here, it's responsible for separation of temporal lobe from two lobes, which are frontal and parietal. And finally, the paretio-occipital sulci separates the parietal lobe from the occipital lobe. So, brain lobes are 4, and their major sulci are 3: central, paretio-occipital, and lateral. Also, there are something known as major gyri. What are the gyri? Look at here in this diagram. In addition to the depressions, there are elevations. These elevations are known as gyri. The two major gyri are located in front and behind the central sulci. So, pre- and post-central gyri are found around the central sulci. The brain divisions. Actually, during development of the brain was divided into 3 parts: fore, mid, and hind. Forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. We have talked about the midbrain while I was talking about the brainstem. Then the hindbrain is made up of bone, medulla, and cerebellum. So here is the midbrain, here is the hindbrain, and here is the forebrain. So that bones and medulla are common between hindbrain and brainstem. The diencephalon is made up of 3 parts shown in here: hypothalamus, thalamus, and pineal glands. Again, brainstem is made up of midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Please remember, pons and medulla oblongata belongs to hindbrain according to categorization of brain development. The second component of the central nervous system is the spinal cord, which actually consists of a white matter and a gray matter. The white matter consists of axons. Axons which are equivalent to nerve fibers. Any axon or fiber running to and from the central nervous system. Gray matter is darker in color as shown in here. It contains the ganglia or cell bodies, synapses, and it's responsible for the reflexes. Another thing shown in here in the diagram is the dorsal root and ventral root. The dorsal root is the gateway to the spinal cord for a sensory neuron, while ventral root is the gateway outside the central nervous system or outside the spinal cord for a motor neuron. Actually, these roots connect in here to form a great spinal nerve, which has both spinal, sensory, and motor. So that a spinal nerve is actually made up of a ventral root that has met a dorsal root. Ventral contains axon of motor. Dorsal contains the axons of sensory. The dorsal root consists of cell bodies of the sensory neurons, so forming a ganglion, like a sac, which is known as a dorsal root ganglion. There's something known as spinal segment. What is a spinal segment? Spinal segment is a part of the spinal cord that lead to roulettes that would form a pair of spinal nerves. Look here. This side would lead to a spinal nerve, and the other side would lead to another spinal nerve. So, the part of the spinal cord that will give rise to one pair of spinal nerves would be known as a single spinal segment. Finally, the cranial nerves, which originate from the brain. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves that originate from the brain and are classified as follows: either sensory, carrying sensory information from any receptor, touching receptor, temperature, pain, pressure, or a special sensory neuron for our sensations, hearing, vision, smell. This is a special sensory. Or a motor nerve that carries impulses from the brain to the organ. And finally, these nerves may be mixed nerves, carry both types, either motor or sensory. So cranial nerves, which are 12 pairs, may be one of these 4 classifications. All the cranial nerves actually originate from brain stem, except for the first 2, which are known as olfactory and optic nerves. Olfactory comes from the olfactory epithelium found in our nose. Optic nerve comes from the retinal ganglion cells inside our eyes. Now we have said olfactory comes from our nose. Is it a sensory, motor, mixed, or special? Yes, it is a special sensory nerve. Same as the optic, which is a special sensory nerve responsible for vision. The third cranial nerve is the oculomotor nerve, which is a motor nerve responsible for eye movements. Here is the oculomotor nerve. Then, trochlear nerve, which is a second motor nerve responsible for vision. Trigeminal nerve is actually responsible for the face. So it's a mixed nerve containing sensory and motor neurons. Abducens nerve, which is responsible for eye movement, is a motor nerve and particularly is responsible for the abduction of the eye pole. Number 7 is a facial nerve, which is shown here, and it's a maxillary nerve. Then vestibular part is responsible for the balance. Cochlear part is coming from the cochlea name, if you remember, inside the ear, so it's responsible for the hearing. Glossopharyngeal nerve is a maxillary, and it supplies the head and neck. Vagus nerve, please refer to the GIT. Vagus nerve is responsible for innervations inside the thorax and abdomen, and it's a maxillary nerve. Accessory nerve is a motor neuron for the muscles of neck and upper back. Again, refer to the GIT for the hypoglossal nerve, which is responsible for innervations that lead to tongue movements. These abbreviations would help you to remember these 12 nerves in addition to their type or classification, either mixed, motor, sensory, special, and what each nerve actually supply. And here we have reached the end of this lecture. Thank you.